He chose the most special day of his infertile wife's life to reveal his betrayal. He showed up with his pregnant mistress at the grand opening of the orphanage his wife had always dreamed of, but before he could even step inside, a judge was waiting for him at the door, and what happened next was something he could never have seen coming. The October sun cast long shadows across Beacon Hill as Fletcher Davenport stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. 42 stories above Boston, he surveyed the city like a modern monarch, red brick and gleaming glass, history and progress intertwined beneath him. His family name adorned 6 major developments, visible from where he stood, with 3 more under construction. "Mr. Davenport?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 4 o'clock is here." Fletcher straightened his custom Thomas pink tie, Abigail's gift from their anniversary last month. "Send her in, Patricia." Willow Sinclair entered with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how good she looked. Her marketing presentation was impeccable, her main accent carefully polished away after years of practice. "The Hale Street development needs a fresh approach," she explained, leaning forward slightly. "The old money in this city responds to legacy, Mr. Davenport, not innovation." Fletcher nodded, impressed despite himself. "Call me Fletcher, please." "Only if you'll call me Willow." Their eyes held for a moment too long. That evening, Fletcher's Bentley crawled through traffic toward Beacon Hill. He checked his watch. 7:15. Abigail would understand. She always did. The thought brought a familiar twist of guilt that he quickly suppressed. The Davenport mansion stood in dignified grandeur among its neighbors, a Victorian masterpiece with a rich history that predated his family's acquisition by a century. Inside, warm light spilled from the dining room. "I was about to send a search party." Abigail smiled, rising to kiss his cheek. Her dark hair was gathered in an elegant twist, her simple black dress perfectly tailored. At 38, Abby radiated a quiet grace that still took his breath away after 12 years of marriage. Board meeting ran long, Harrison still nervous about the Cambridge project. "There's risotto in the warming drawer." She guided him to the table where blueprints were spread out. "I made some changes to the library space at New Dawn." Fletcher poured himself a scotch before examining the plans for Abigail's orphanage project. The converted historical mansion would house 20 children with educational facilities that put most private schools to shame. "Abby, this is—" He hesitated. "The budget's already stretched. I've secured additional funding from the Monroe Foundation." Her voice remained light, but her eyes hardened slightly. "I'm not touching the company money, Fletcher." He raised his hands in surrender. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She gathered the blueprints. "Your father would have backed this project without question." The mention of his father landed like a physical blow. Judge Montgomery had said nearly the same thing at their last lunch. Fletcher drained his scotch. "I've got a breakfast meeting tomorrow. I should prepare." Abigail watched him retreat to his study, her expression unreadable. 3 weeks later, Fletcher sat in a Chicago hotel room, documents scattered across the bed. His phone buzzed with a text from Abigail. "Meeting with the contractors went well. They love the reading nook designs. Miss you." He typed back, "Great news. Miss you too. Late dinner with investors don't wait up." The lie came easily now. Too easily. A knock at the door announced Willow's arrival. She'd flown in coincidentally for a marketing conference, suggesting dinner to discuss the Hale Street campaign. One dinner had become 2, then drinks in the hotel bar, and now this. Her perfume filling his room, her laugh breaking something open inside him that he hadn't realized was closed. "You should see your face right now," she teased, slipping off her heels. "So serious, Mr. Davenport." "Just thinking." "About her?" Willow's tone remained light, but her eyes sharpened. "About the presentation tomorrow." "Liar." She moved closer, fearless in a way Abigail never was. "You can tell me the truth, Fletcher. I don't need the perfect version of you." Her words struck a chord he didn't know could still be played. How long had he performed perfection? The perfect son, the perfect businessman, the perfect husband. Even with Abigail, especially with Abigail, he maintained the facade his father had demanded. Willow's lips found his, and Fletcher Davenport, heir to Boston's most respected real estate dynasty, surrendered to imperfection. "She's incredible, Thad. You should see what she's created." Judge Thaddeus Montgomery nodded, cutting precisely into his steak. Their monthly lunch at the Union Club was a tradition spanning decades, from when Fletcher was a boy accompanying his father to now. Abigail has always had vision. The judge's voice carried the weight of his 63 years on the bench. Your father saw that in her immediately. Fletcher shifted uncomfortably. The orphanage opens next month. Full-page spread in the Globe this Sunday. Remarkable woman. Montgomery studied him over half-moon glasses, especially considering what she's endured. The reference to Abigail's surgeries and lost pregnancies hung between them. 3 babies, 3 funerals with tiny caskets. Then the emergency hysterectomy that ended all possibility. Abigail had emerged from that darkness with a determination that still humbled Fletcher. "How's the new marketing director working out?" Montgomery asked, his tone suddenly casual. "Willow, isn't it?" Fletcher nearly choked on his water. "Fine. She's fine. Good ideas for the Hale Street property." The judge signaled for the check. "Your father built Davenport Developments on reputation, Fletcher, not just buildings." "I'm well aware. Are you?" Montgomery's gaze was penetrating. "Sometimes I wonder." The New Dawn Children's Home took shape like a testament to Abigail's will. The Victorian brownstone's restoration maintained its historical character while creating bright, welcoming spaces inside. Each bedroom was uniquely designed, the antithesis of institutional living. Fletcher watched his wife direct contractors with precision, born from 2 years of planning. Her entire being had transformed since conceiving this project, as if in creating a home for abandoned children, she'd found purpose beyond their private grief. "The garden needs more lighting." Abigail marked her clipboard. "We can't have shadows back here." "It's already over budget, Abby." "These children have lived their lives in shadows, Fletcher." Her voice was quiet but unyielding. "I won't have a single dark corner in their new home." He nodded, admiring her even as anxiety gnawed at him. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Another text from Willow. "Third one today. Need to see you. Important. Lunch?" He typed back, "Can't today, tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "Too important for tomorrow. I'm pregnant." The world tilted beneath Fletcher's feet. He steadied himself against a wall, suddenly unable to breathe. "Fletcher." Abigail appeared beside him, concern etching her features. "Are you all right? You've gone white." He forced a smile. "Just a bit lightheaded. Probably should have eaten something." "Let me get you some water." She touched his arm gently. "We can't have you fainting before the big day." As she walked away, Fletcher stared at his phone, at the 2 impossible words that threatened everything. "I'm pregnant." His thumb hovered over the screen as another message appeared. "Don't worry. I can handle this discreetly. But we need to talk about our future. All 3 of us." Fletcher looked up at Abigail, radiantly discussing paint colors with a contractor, then back at his phone. The perfect life he'd constructed was about to shatter, and he had no idea how to hold the pieces together. 8 weeks, Willow said, stirring her untouched tea at the discreet cafe 3 blocks from Fletcher's office, far enough to avoid being seen, close enough to claim coincidence if necessary. The doctor confirmed it yesterday. Fletcher's mind raced through calculations. Chicago was 2 months ago, which aligned perfectly. His throat tightened. "Are you certain it's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Willow's green eyes flashed. "Yes, Fletcher. I haven't been with anyone else." He nodded, accepting the lie he desperately needed to believe. "What do you want to do?" "I want to keep it." Her voice softened, hand drifting to her still flat stomach. "I've never thought about being a mother before, but now, it feels right." Fletcher ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. A child. His child. The one thing he and Abigail had tried for years to create, the dream that had died on an operating table 5 years ago. "My situation is complicated." "You mean your wife?" Willow's tone remained neutral. "I'm not asking you to leave her, Fletcher. I understand your position." Relief flooded him, followed immediately by shame. "Then what do you want?" "Just support. Financial security for the baby. Discretion." She reached for his hand. "I can raise our child independently. You can be as involved or uninvolved as you choose." Fletcher studied her face. Those sharp cheekbones, the calculated vulnerability in her expression. He should end this now. Pay her off. Transfer her to another division, contain the damage. Instead, he found himself saying, "I want to be involved." Something flickered behind Willow's eyes. Triumph, perhaps, before she squeezed his hand. "You'll be an amazing father." Abigail's laughter echoed through the brownstone as Fletcher arrived home. Following the sound, He found her in what would become the orphanage's art room, painting with Dr. Eliza Palmer. "Fletcher!" Abigail's face was alight with joy, a splash of blue paint on her cheek. Eliza brought samples for the mural. Dr. Palmer, the gynecologist who had performed Abigail's emergency hysterectomy, smiled warmly. "We're thinking storybook scenes for this wall, adventures and possibilities." Fletcher nodded mechanically, guilt a physical presence in his chest. This woman had held Abigail's hand through their worst moments, had saved her life when the last pregnancy went catastrophically wrong. "It's wonderful," he managed. "You look exhausted," Abigail said, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Tough day?" "Just the usual battles." He kissed her forehead, careful to avoid the paint. "The Harrison portfolio is more complicated than we anticipated." The ease with which he lied now frightened him. Each deception was a small betrayal, accumulating like toxic debt. "I'll make dinner tonight," Abigail offered. "You should rest." As she chatted with Dr. Palmer about color schemes, Fletcher realized with painful clarity that Abigail had rebullied herself after their shared tragedy. While he had sought escape in Willow's arms, his wife had channeled her grief into creation. "Have you lost your damn mind?" Judge Montgomery's voice cut through the wood-paneled silence of his chambers. Fletcher had sought him out, desperate for the guidance his own father could no longer provide. "It wasn't planned, Thad. Affairs rarely are." The judge removed his glasses, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "What exactly do you want from me? Absolution?" Fletcher paced before the judge's massive oak desk. "I need advice. She's keeping the baby." "Of course she is." Montgomery's laugh was bitter. "Young, ambitious woman gets pregnant by one of Boston's wealthiest men. I'd be surprised if it wasn't part of her plan all along. Willow isn't like that. They never are, until they are." The judge leaned forward. "Have you told Abigail?" The question hung between them like a loaded gun. "I can't," Fletcher whispered. "Not with the orphanage opening in 3 weeks. This would destroy her." Montgomery's expression hardened. "What destroys people isn't truth, Fletcher. It's believing in a lie until the moment it collapses. I just need time to figure this out. And meanwhile, you'll continue sleeping with both women, living your double life." The judge's disgust was palpable. "Your father would be ashamed." The words struck with surgical precision. Richard Davenport had built an empire on unwavering principles: family, loyalty, appearance. The triumvirate of values he'd drilled into his son from birth. "My father isn't here." "No," Montgomery agreed, "but his legacy is. The question is whether you're worthy of it." Fletcher left without answering. The weight of disappointment, his father's, the judge's, eventually Abigail's, crushing his chest. October arrived with perfect New England splendor. Crimson and gold leaves transformed Boston Common into a canvas of autumnal glory. The orphanage's grand opening was scheduled for the 3rd Sunday of the month, coinciding with peak foliage. Fletcher maintained his precarious balance, dividing himself between worlds. With Abigail, he was the supportive husband, attending donor meetings and helping with final preparations. With Willow, whose body was beginning to change with their growing secret, he played expectant father during clandestine meetings in her South End apartment. "I've been thinking," Willow said one evening as they lay in her bed, her 16-week belly forming a small but distinct curve. "Maybe after the baby comes we could reconsider our arrangement." Fletcher tensed. "What do you mean?" "This sneaking around, the secrecy." She traced patterns on his chest. "It's not what I wanted for my child's father. Willow, we've discussed this. My situation..." "Your situation is your choice, Fletcher." Her voice remained soft, but with an edge he hadn't heard before. "Abigail can't give you children. I can. I am." The cruelty of her words struck him like a physical blow. "That's not fair, isn't it?" She sat up, sheet falling away. "You created this life with me, not her. Doesn't that mean something?" It did mean something. Something primal and complicated that Fletcher wasn't proud of. In the weeks since learning of Willow's pregnancy, he'd caught himself staring at expectant couples, imagining himself openly by her side. "I can't just leave Abigail." "Because you love her," Willow challenged. "Or because you're afraid of what people will think?" The question penetrated deeper than she could know. His entire life had been constructed around appearances. The right schools, the right wife, the right business decisions. Each choice carefully calculated to honor the Davenport name. "Both," he admitted finally. Willow nodded, accepting his answer with surprising grace. I understand. For now, this is enough. The "for now" lingered between them, like a promissory note. 1 week before the orphanage opening, Judge Montgomery requested another lunch. This time he chose a small Italian restaurant in the North End, far from their usual haunts. "Interesting choice," Fletcher commented, as they settled into a corner booth. "I thought privacy might be appropriate." Montgomery studied the menu without interest. "How's Abigail?" "Excited. Nervous. The orphanage is her life's work." "And your mistress?" The judge's bluntness was startling. "Still pregnant, I assume?" Fletcher's jaw tightened. "I'd prefer not to discuss that here." "Where would you prefer to discuss it? Your marital bed? The orphanage opening?" Montgomery set down his menu. "You're running out of time, Fletcher." "I'm handling it." "Are you?" The judge's penetrating gaze was uncomfortably familiar, the same look his father had given him when he knew Fletcher was lying. "Sources tell me she started showing. 4 or 5 months along?" "How do you know that?" Montgomery waved dismissively. "Boston is smaller than you think, particularly for people in our positions." A chill ran through Fletcher. If the judge knew, who else might suspect? "I have a proposition." Montgomery leaned forward. "A judicial colleague in San Francisco owes me a favor. His court could use someone with Ms. Sinclair's marketing expertise. Full relocation package. Generous compensation." Fletcher stared. "You want to ship her across the country? I want to give you an opportunity to salvage what matters. By paying her off? Sending her away like she's nothing?" Fletcher's voice rose despite himself. "That's my child she's carrying." Montgomery's expression softened unexpectedly. "Are you certain of that, son?" The question landed like a slap. "What are you implying?" "Only that you might consider all possibilities before destroying your marriage." The judge signaled for the check. "My offer stands until the orphanage opening. After that, I can't help you." The Saturday before the inauguration, Fletcher visited Willow's apartment with fresh doubts circling in his mind. The judge's insinuation had planted a seed he couldn't uproot. He found her packing a weekend bag. "Going somewhere?" he asked casually. "Just overnight. My friend Caroline's baby shower in Providence." Willow smiled, her hand resting on her now prominent belly. "Thought I should take notes." Something in her manner triggered Fletcher's suspicion. "I didn't know you had friends in Providence." "There's a lot you don't know about me, Fletcher." She zipped the bag closed. "That's how you prefer it, isn't it? Compartmentalized, convenient." Her tone caught him off guard. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm simply acknowledging reality." She faced him directly. "Tomorrow's the big day, isn't it? Your wife's orphanage opening?" Fletcher nodded cautiously. "Yes." "Will you be giving a speech, standing proudly beside her for the photographers?" "Willow, we've discussed this. We've discussed a lot of things." She moved closer, her pregnancy undeniable between them. "But circumstances change. I've been thinking about our child's future, about what kind of life I want for them." Alarm bells rang in Fletcher's mind. "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning I'm tired of hiding." Her gaze didn't waver. "I think it's time Boston met the mother of Fletcher Davenport's child, don't you?" His blood ran cold. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious." Willow placed his hand on her stomach. "Either you introduce me properly into your life, or I'll introduce myself. At the orphanage opening tomorrow." "That would destroy Abigail." "That's unfortunate." Willow's voice was cool. "But ultimately not my concern." Fletcher stared at this woman, this stranger carrying his supposed child, and saw nothing of the person he thought he knew. "This is blackmail. This is negotiation." She smiled, retrieving her bag. "Think about it overnight. Let me know your decision by morning." As she brushed past him toward the door, she added, "Oh, and Fletcher, I already have my outfit picked out for tomorrow. Beautiful maternity dress, perfect for such a meaningful charity event." The apartment door closed behind her with soft finality, leaving Fletcher alone with the realization that he'd created his own destruction, piece by calculated piece. Dawn broke over Boston with picture-perfect clarity, as if the universe had conspired to provide ideal conditions for Abigail's moment of triumph. Sunlight glinted off the Charles River and cast the city in a golden glow that photographers would later describe as providential. In the master bathroom of their Beacon Hill mansion, Fletcher splashed cold water on his face, studying the stranger in the mirror. Dark circles betrayed his sleepless night. After Willow's ultimatum, he'd returned home to find Abigail already asleep. Papers for the orphanage opening spread around her like fallen leaves. He'd stood in the doorway watching her, this woman who had rebuilt herself from tragedy, and felt a crushing weight of what he was about to destroy. His phone vibrated on the marble countertop. Willow's message was simple. What will it be? Fletcher had spent the night weighing impossible options. If he refused Willow, she would create a public scene that would humiliate Abigail on what should be her proudest day. If he acquiesced, he'd be taking the first irreversible step toward dismantling his marriage. The third option, the one Judge Montgomery had suggested, felt increasingly impossible. Willow wouldn't accept a payoff now. She wanted legitimacy, recognition, a permanent place in his life. With trembling fingers, he typed, "I'll introduce you as a colleague. Nothing more. After the ceremony, we'll discuss next steps." Her response came instantly. "A beginning. I'll take it. See you at 11. "Fletcher." Abigail's voice drifted from the bedroom. "Are you all right in there?" He cleared his throat. "Fine. Just nervous about my speech." She appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a tailored navy suit that had been delivered the previous week, specifically for today's ceremony. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, her only jewelry, the pearl earrings his mother had given her on their wedding day. "You'll be perfect," she said, straightening his tie with practiced hands. "You always are." The irony of her words twisted in his chest. "Abby, if something ever happened, if I ever did anything to hurt you..." "Shh." She pressed a finger to his lips. "No negativity today. This is our day of new beginnings. Our day." The possessive pronoun felt like another betrayal. This was Abigail's day, her vision, her heart poured into physical form, and he was about to taint it forever. "I love you," he said, meaning it more in this moment of impending betrayal than perhaps ever before. She smiled, reaching up to kiss him softly. "I know. Now finish getting ready. The caterers arrive in 30 minutes. New Dawn Children's Home gleamed in the autumn sunlight, its restored Victorian facade a testament to the marriage of history and purpose. Multicolored balloons flanked the entrance, where a silk ribbon awaited the ceremonial cutting. Media crews set up cameras while catering staff arranged an elegant buffet in the spacious garden. Fletcher arrived early with Abigail, watching her flutter between arrangements, making final adjustments only she could discern. The first guests began arriving at 10:30, board members, donors, city officials. Boston's mayor presented Abigail with a ceremonial key to the city, commending her vision in creating a true home, not merely a shelter. At 10:55, Fletcher excused himself to check his phone in a quiet corner. No messages from Willow, but a text from Judge Montgomery. "I'll be arriving shortly. Hope you've made the right decision." The judge's cryptic message sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Fletcher. What did Montgomery know that he wasn't sharing? At precisely 11x, as the garden filled with Boston's elite, Fletcher saw her. Willow stood at the entrance, radiant in a cream-colored maternity dress that made no attempt to conceal her condition. At nearly 5 months, her pregnancy was unmistakable. Fletcher felt the blood drain from his face. He crossed the garden in long strides, intercepting her before anyone else could greet her. "You look pale, Fletcher," she smiled, placing a proprietary hand on his arm. "Aren't you going to welcome me?" "Not here," he hissed, guiding her toward a less populated corner. "We had an agreement." "Did we?" "I agreed to be introduced as a colleague. I'm still waiting for that introduction." Her eyes scanned the crowd. "Your wife has done a remarkable job. Such a beautiful space for children." The casual cruelty of her observations stunned him. "You need to leave." "After coming all this way?" "I don't think so." She smoothed her dress over her rounded belly. "Besides, I've already been noticed." Fletcher followed her gaze to where Samantha Willoughby, Abigail's personal assistant, was watching them with undisguised suspicion. Before he could respond, Judge Montgomery appeared beside them. "Ms. Sinclair," the judge said with practiced cordiality, "what a surprise to see you here." "Judge Montgomery." Willow's smile remained fixed. "I wouldn't miss such an important event. Fletcher was just about to introduce me around." "Was he?" Montgomery's gaze shifted to Fletcher. "Perhaps you'd both join me inside first. I believe there's something we should discuss privately." The judge's authoritative tone left no room for argument. Fletcher guided Willow toward the house, desperate to contain the situation before Abigail noticed. As they entered the private study that would serve as the director's office, Fletcher caught sight of Abigail across the garden, surrounded by admirers, yet somehow looking directly at him, a question in her eyes. "This is highly inappropriate," Montgomery began once the door closed behind them. I was invited, Willow countered, settling comfortably into an armchair. By Fletcher. Under duress, I imagine. The judge remained standing, his imposing height accentuated by his formal posture. Tell me, Ms. Sinclair, what exactly do you hope to accomplish today? Honesty, she replied simply. I'm tired of secrets. My child deserves better. Your child, Montgomery repeated thoughtfully. Or should we say, someone's child? Fletcher's attention snapped to the judge. What does that mean? Montgomery removed an envelope from his inner pocket. I took the liberty of conducting some inquiries, Fletcher. Professional ones. You had me investigated? Willow's composure slipped momentarily. Not you specifically, rather a pattern of behavior that caught my attention. Montgomery turned to Fletcher. Did you know that Miss Sinclair worked for Caldwell Industries before joining Davenport Developments? Fletcher frowned. Yes, it was on her resume. And that she had a close relationship with CEO Thomas Caldwell? That's none of your business, Willow interjected, a flush rising to her cheeks. Perhaps not, the judge conceded, but it becomes relevant when a pattern emerges. Promising young woman forms relationship with married executive, pregnancy follows, financial arrangements ensue. Fletcher felt the floor tilt beneath him. What are you saying? I'm saying this isn't Miss Sinclair's first performance. Montgomery handed the envelope to Fletcher. Thomas Caldwell paid a substantial settlement 2 years ago. Before that, it was Philip Harrison in Chicago. The names hit Fletcher like physical blows. Harrison portfolio. The complicated deal he'd been struggling with for months. The coincidence was too perfect. This is slander, Willow hissed, rising from her chair. You can't prove anything. Perhaps not conclusively, Montgomery agreed. But DNA testing could. Would you be willing to submit to that, Ms. Sinclair, to prove beyond doubt that Fletcher is indeed the father? The momentary flash of panic in Willow's eyes told Fletcher everything he needed to know. You lied to me. His voice was hollow. The baby isn't mine. Of course it's yours, she insisted, but the certainty had vanished from her tone. This is just a desperate attempt to discredit me. Montgomery checked his watch. The ceremony begins in 15 minutes. I suggest we resolve this quickly and discreetly. There's nothing to resolve, Willow declared, gathering her purse. I came here to end the secrecy, and that's exactly what I intend to do. She moved toward the door with determined steps. Fletcher reached for her arm, but she evaded his grasp. Willow, wait. You had your chance, Fletcher. Her eyes were cold now, calculating. Now everyone will know what kind of man really heads the Davenport empire. The door opened before she reached it, revealing Abigail standing in the threshold. The two women froze, facing each other like mirror opposites. One dark-haired and elegant in navy, the other blonde and visibly pregnant in cream. Fletcher. Abigail's voice was perfectly controlled, betraying nothing. The mayor is asking for you. It's almost time for the ribbon cutting. Her eyes moved from her husband to Willow's protruding belly, then to Judge Montgomery's grave expression. Understanding dawned in her features, a shadow passing behind her eyes. Abby, I can explain, Fletcher began, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. Abigail raised a hand, stopping him. Not now. There are 200 people and 3 news crews waiting. She stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. Your public awaits, Fletcher. The cold formality in her voice was worse than any outburst. Fletcher moved toward her, desperate to say something, anything that might mitigate what was happening. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor's amplified voice floated in from the garden. Please join me in welcoming our hosts for this momentous occasion. Willow seized the moment to slip past Abigail into the hallway, vanishing toward the garden. Judge Montgomery followed, pausing briefly beside Abigail. I tried to prevent this, he said quietly. Abigail's smile was brittle. Some things can't be prevented, only endured. Left alone with his wife, Fletcher felt himself shrinking under her gaze. Abby, she's lying about the baby. Montgomery has evidence. Stop. The word cut through his excuses like a blade. We have a ceremony to complete. After that, we can discuss how thoroughly you've betrayed everything we built together. Her composure was terrifying, a mask so perfect it revealed the devastation beneath. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the garden, her back straight, her steps measured, every inch the poised philanthropist about to realize her dream. Fletcher followed, stepping from the cool interior into the harsh sunlight, where hundreds of eyes watched their approach. The crowd's applause felt like an indictment. Across the gathering, He spotted Willow positioning herself prominently near the front, one hand resting on her belly in a gesture that couldn't be misinterpreted. Several guests had already noticed, whispers spreading like ripples in a pond. As the mayor called them forward for the ribbon cutting, Fletcher felt his carefully constructed world beginning to collapse. But it was the sight of Dr. Eliza Palmer's face, the woman who had held Abigail through her darkest hours, that truly revealed the magnitude of his betrayal. The doctor's expression held such raw contempt that Fletcher physically recoiled. Abigail's fingers were ice cold when they handed her the ceremonial scissors. She smiled for the cameras, spoke eloquently about new beginnings, and cut the ribbon to thunderous applause. Not once did her performance falter. Only Fletcher, standing beside her, could see the slight tremor in her hands, the tension in her jaw, the unshed tears brightening her eyes. Only he understood that as New Dawn Children's Home officially opened its doors, his marriage had silently, definitively ended. When the applause faded and guests began moving inside for tours, Abigail turned to him. "Find Judge Montgomery," she whispered through her smile. "Bring him and that woman to the director's office in 10 minutes. We'll settle this privately." Relief flooded through Fletcher. Somehow, incredibly, Abigail was offering him a chance to explain, to contain the damage before it spread further. "Thank you," he breathed. "Don't thank me," she replied, her smile never wavering as she waved to a photographer. "This isn't forgiveness. This is damage control." As Abigail moved gracefully into the crowd of well-wishers, Fletcher spotted Judge Montgomery near the buffet, his expression grave. Beside him stood Samantha Willoughby, whispering urgently in the judge's ear. Both turned to look at Fletcher with expressions that sent a chill through his body. Across the garden, Willow had cornered the Boston Globe Society reporter, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. The reporter's eyes widened, her gaze darting to Fletcher and back to Willow's pregnant form. Fletcher realized with sickening clarity that he'd been granted not a reprieve, but a brief pause before an even greater catastrophe unfolded. The private confrontation Abigail had ordered would determine not just his marriage, but his entire future. And based on the determined set of Judge Montgomery's jaw, as he strode across the lawn toward him, Fletcher suspected that future was darker than he could possibly imagine. The director's office of New Dawn Children's Home had been designed as a sanctuary, warm cherry wood paneling, built-in bookshelves, and windows overlooking the garden, where celebration continued in blissful ignorance of the storm gathering within these walls. Now, as Fletcher closed the door behind him, the space felt like a courtroom awaiting a verdict. Abigail stood behind the antique desk, her hands resting lightly on its polished surface. Gone was the public smile, replaced by a composure so rigid it seemed she might shatter if touched. Judge Montgomery positioned himself by the fireplace, his formal posture reminiscent of a bailiff. Dr. Palmer had joined them unexpectedly, standing supportively near Abigail. Samantha Willoughby ushered Willow in and closed the door, remaining beside it like a sentry. Fletcher struggled to read the dynamic in the room, these 5 people connected by invisible threads of loyalty and betrayal, with him at the center of the web. "Well," Abigail began, her voice eerily calm, "this is certainly not how I envisioned today's milestone." Willow straightened, hands cradling her belly protectively. "I'm sorry for the timing, Abigail, but secrets have a way of emerging eventually." "Indeed they do." Abigail's gaze shifted to Fletcher. "Perhaps we should begin with the most basic fact. You've been sleeping with my husband." The directness of the statement hung in the air. Willow didn't flinch. "Yes, for several months now. And the child you're carrying is presumably his." "Without question," Willow stated firmly, though Fletcher caught a flicker of unease in her eyes when she glanced at Judge Montgomery. "I see." Abigail's control was terrifying. Not a tremor, not a crack. "And you chose today, of all days, to make this known." "I didn't choose anything," Willow countered. "Fletcher has been promising for months to acknowledge our relationship. I simply grew tired of waiting." Fletcher stepped forward. "That's not true. You gave me an ultimatum yesterday." "Enough." Abigail's voice sliced through his defense. "I'm not interested in the timeline of your infidelity." She turned her attention fully to Willow, studying her with clinical detachment. "What exactly do you want? Money? Position? My husband? Be specific." The question seemed to catch Willow off guard. She'd clearly expected tears, accusations, a scene, not this calculated assessment. "I want respect," she recovered quickly. "Acknowledgement of my child's rightful place in Fletcher's life." Rightful, Abigail repeated thoughtfully. An interesting choice of word. Judge Montgomery cleared his throat. Perhaps this would be an appropriate time to address certain inconsistencies in Ms. Sinclair's narrative. By all means, Abigail gestured for him to continue. The judge removed documents from his pocket. Fletcher, are you familiar with the name Robert Erickson? Fletcher frowned. The VP of Operations? Of course. And were you aware that Mr. Erickson and Ms. Sinclair have had a parallel relationship during much of her involvement with you? The revelation hit Fletcher like a physical blow. What? Willow's composure cracked visibly. That's absurd. Is it? Montgomery handed a document to Fletcher. These are security logs from the executive parking garage. Ms. Sinclair's car was recorded entering and leaving alongside Mr. Erickson's vehicle on numerous occasions, particularly on evenings when you were traveling. Fletcher stared at the dates, recognizing several coinciding with his business trips. The implications churned his stomach. This proves nothing, Willow insisted, but her voice had lost its certainty. Perhaps not conclusively, Montgomery agreed, but combined with your history at Caldwell Industries and the Harrison Group, a pattern emerges. Samantha Willoughby stepped forward with a tablet. Ms. Davenport asked me to compile information after I noticed Ms. Sinclair's condition several weeks ago. I was concerned about potential complications. Fletcher looked at his wife in shock. You knew? I suspected, Abigail corrected, her composure unwavering. Samantha noticed certain irregularities in the marketing department expense reports, private dinners, hotel charges when you weren't even in the same city. Willow's confidence was visibly deteriorating. This is a coordinated attack to discredit me. No, Dr. Palmer spoke for the first time. This is what happens when you underestimate the woman you're attempting to destroy. She approached Willow with professional calm. I've been Abigail's physician for 15 years. I know intimately what she endured trying to create a family. The procedures, the hormones, the 3 lost pregnancies, the emergency surgery that nearly killed her. Each word landed like a stone on Fletcher's conscience. He had been there through all of it, but somehow had compartmentalized that anguish, separating it from his affair with Willow. Dr. Palmer continued, addressing Willow directly. When Samantha contacted me with concerns about your condition, I remembered something peculiar. Last month, a lab technician mentioned running multiple HCG tests for a Willow S on different dates, ordered by different doctors. Willow's face drained of color. You had no right to access my medical information. I didn't access anything, Dr. Palmer clarified. The technician simply commented on the unusual testing pattern. One test was ordered by a Dr. Reynolds in obstetrics, presumably your actual doctor. The other was ordered by a Dr. Mitchell from a clinic, known for providing medical documentation on demand. That's circumstantial, Willow countered, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the edge of a chair. Abigail observed the exchange with unnerving calm. Fletcher, you seem surprised by these revelations. Did you never question the convenience of this pregnancy? Never wonder if perhaps you were being manipulated? The truth was, he hadn't questioned it, had accepted his fate as punishment for his betrayal. Now, facing the possibility that he'd been not just unfaithful but utterly foolish, Fletcher felt something collapse inside him. I think, Judge Montgomery interjected, we should address the most fundamental question. Is the child Ms. Sinclair is carrying actually yours, Fletcher? All eyes turned to Willow, whose defiant stance had subtly shifted to defensive. Of course it is, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Then you wouldn't object to a paternity test, Abigail suggested smoothly. I'm not submitting my baby to invasive procedures to satisfy your vindictiveness. Non-invasive prenatal paternity tests exist, Dr. Palmer noted clinically. A simple blood draw from you, DNA from Fletcher. Results within days. Willow's eyes darted between them, calculating. Fletcher recognized that look. She was searching for an exit strategy. This is harassment, she declared, reaching for her purse. I didn't come here to be interrogated. No, Abigail agreed. You came here to destroy something precious to me, on the day that mattered most. For the first time, emotion cracked through Abigail's composure. Not sadness or rage, but something deeper and more devastating. Pure, unfiltered disappointment. Did you think I wouldn't fight back? Abigail asked softly. That I would simply crumble? That my pain would be entertaining for you? The directness of the question seemed to penetrate Willow's defenses. For a moment, Genuine discomfort crossed her features. "This isn't about hurting you," she said, less convincingly. "It's about my child's future." "A child that may not be Fletcher's at all," Judge Montgomery reminded her. Willow's face hardened. "I don't have to prove anything to any of you." She turned to Fletcher. "Are you going to let them attack me like this? The mother of your child?" The desperation in her appeal struck Fletcher as artificial, performance rather than genuine emotion. He looked at this woman who had occupied so much of his life these past months, and suddenly saw a stranger. "Answer the question, Willow," he said quietly. "Is the baby mine?" Something shifted in her eyes, calculation giving way to resignation, then quickly hardening to defiance. "Does it matter?" she countered. "You believed it was. You were willing to risk everything for this child. What does that tell you about your marriage?" The deflection struck its target. Fletcher felt Abigail's gaze on him, evaluating his reaction. In that moment he realized Willow had never been the real threat to his marriage. His own weakness, his pathetic need for validation, had done the damage long before she appeared. Samantha's phone chimed, breaking the tense silence. She glanced at the screen and turned to Abigail. "The Globe reporter is asking for a statement. Apparently Miss Sinclair spoke with her before coming in here." A flicker of triumph crossed Willow's face. "Some things can't be contained no matter how powerful you think you are." Judge Montgomery stepped forward. "Before you celebrate prematurely, Ms. Sinclair, you should consider your position carefully. False claims of paternity can constitute fraud. Combined with your documented pattern at previous employers, you're facing potential criminal charges." "You're bluffing," Willow said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "Am I?" The judge's tone was measured. "Robert Erickson arrived 10 minutes ago. He's waiting in the garden. Shall we invite him to join this discussion?" The color drained from Willow's face. Fletcher watched the transformation with horrified fascination, her confident facade crumbling, replaced by naked panic. "Robert doesn't know," she whispered almost to herself. "Doesn't know what?" Fletcher demanded. "That you've been sleeping with both of us? Or that you told both of us the baby was ours?" Willow's silence was confirmation enough. Dr. Palmer shook her head in disbelief. "Two paternity candidates, both married, both executives at the same company," the doctor observed. "That's quite a hedge on your investment." Abigail, who had been watching the exchange with terrible composure, finally spoke. "Judge Montgomery, would you please escort Miss Sinclair outside? I believe she and Mr. Erickson have much to discuss." "Wait," Willow pleaded, desperation replacing calculation. "We can resolve this privately. There's no need for public spectacle." "Interesting," Abigail noted. "That's precisely what I was thinking when I brought everyone in here, that we could contain this situation discreetly. But you've already spoken to the press, haven't you?" Willow's expression confirmed it before she could deny it. "Then discretion is no longer an option," Abigail concluded. "Judge, please." Montgomery moved toward Willow, who backed away. "You can't do this. You'll destroy Robert's family too. Is that what you want?" The appeal to collateral damage might have worked on the Abigail that Fletcher had known for 12 years, compassionate, empathetic, always considering others' feelings. But the woman standing before them had been forged in a crucible of betrayal and public humiliation. This Abigail was steel where she had once been silk. "I'm not destroying anything," she replied calmly. "I'm simply allowing truth its day. You chose the venue, Miss Sinclair. You chose the audience. Now face the consequences." As Judge Montgomery guided a visibly shaken Willow toward the door, she made one last attempt. "Fletcher," she pleaded, "don't let them do this. Whatever happens with the baby, what we had was real." Fletcher searched his heart for any remnant of the connection he'd thought they shared. He found nothing but hollow shame. Was it? Or was I just another stepping stone? Left without allies, Willow's demeanor transformed entirely, vulnerability replaced by cold fury. "You deserve each other," she hissed. "The perfect power couple, hollow inside, obsessed with appearances. You think you've won. Wait until Boston sees what's behind the Davenport facade." She yanked open the door and stormed out, leaving a vacuum of silence behind her. Fletcher turned to his wife, desperate to fill that silence with something. Apologies, explanations, pleas for understanding. But the look in Abigail's eyes stopped him cold. It wasn't anger he saw there, or even pain. It was something far worse. Absolute clarity. "Abby," he began, her nickname catching in his throat. "I never meant—" "Stop." The word wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of finality. "There's nothing you can say that matters now." Dr. Palmer stepped closer to Abigail. "Should I stay?" "No, thank you, Eliza." Abigail's smile was ghostly. "I believe Fletcher and I need a moment alone." The doctor squeezed Abigail's hand in silent support before departing. Samantha followed after receiving a nod from her employer, closing the door softly behind them. Alone at last, husband and wife regarded each other across an expanse far greater than the physical space between them. Fletcher saw his wife as if for the first time, not the supportive partner he'd taken for granted, but a woman of extraordinary strength who had survived losses that would have broken most people. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said finally, the inadequacy of the words painful even to his own ears. "And yet you made choices guaranteed to do exactly that," Abigail replied. Her composure remained, but something had shifted in her eyes. The compartmentalization that had gotten her through the public confrontation was beginning to crack. "It wasn't about you," Fletcher tried to explain. "After everything we went through with the pregnancies, the surgeries, I felt like a failure. Willow made me feel—" "Do not," Abigail cut him off, her voice dangerously soft. "Tell me how your mistress made you feel. Not today, not in this place." She moved to the window, looking out at the garden where guests still mingled, unaware of the drama unfolding inside. Beyond them, the playground equipment gleamed in the afternoon sun. Swings, slides, a jungle gym painted in primary colors. "Do you know what I thought about every day while creating this place?" she asked, her back to him. "Not just the children who would find sanctuary here, but the children we lost. Emily, James, Alexander. I gave them names. Fletcher. Did you know that?" The revelation struck him like a physical blow. They had never discussed names after the miscarriages. It had been too painful. "I imagined what they might have become," Abigail continued, her voice steady despite the devastating content. "I pictured Emily playing on those swings, James climbing that jungle gym, Alexander learning to read in the library downstairs." She turned to face him, and the depth of loss in her eyes made Fletcher physically recoil. "While I was transforming my grief into something that might help others, you were creating new destruction, new pain." Her composure finally cracked, a single tear tracking down her cheek. Was she worth it, Fletcher? Was she worth all of this? The question hung between them like a blade. Fletcher had no answer that wouldn't sound like another betrayal. Outside the window, a commotion drew their attention. Willow stood in the center of the garden, gesturing angrily at Robert Erickson, while Judge Montgomery attempted to contain the situation. Guests were turning to watch, phones recording the spectacle. The perfect inauguration was devolving into scandalous entertainment. "Your legacy," Abigail observed quietly. "Not the buildings you've developed or the fortune you've accumulated. This moment, this public disintegration of everything your father built." The mention of his father twisted something in Fletcher's chest. Richard Davenport had valued reputation above all else, had built an empire on the foundation of public respect and private integrity. "I'll fix this," Fletcher promised desperately. Abigail's laugh was hollow. "Some things can't be fixed, Fletcher. Some betrayals are too fundamental." She moved toward the door with fluid grace, pausing with her hand on the knob. "I have to salvage what I can of this day. 200 guests, 3 news crews, and 20 children arriving tomorrow who deserve better than this circus." "What do you want me to do?" Fletcher asked, suddenly adrift without her guidance. The look Abigail gave him wasn't hateful or angry. It was worse, it was indifferent. "I want you to disappear," she said simply. "Leave through the service entrance, go home. Pack whatever you need. By morning, I want you gone." The finality in her voice stripped away Fletcher's last defenses. "Abby, please, 12 years, like we can't just—" "12 years," she repeated, her voice breaking slightly. 3 lost babies, 1 near-fatal surgery, and your response was to create a child with another woman." She shook her head slowly. "Except you didn't even do that successfully, did you? You were just a pawn in someone else's game." The truth of her assessment left him speechless. He had destroyed everything, his marriage, his reputation, his father's legacy, and gained nothing. Not even the child he had secretly wanted. "I loved you, Fletcher," Abigail said, her hand still on the doorknob. "Through everything, I loved you. But I can't even look at you now without seeing every lie, every time you came home late, every business trip that wasn't entirely business." She opened the door, letting in the sounds of the garden celebration, now undercut by whispers and speculation. Before stepping through, she delivered her final judgment. You chose appearances over substance your entire life. You chose your father's approval over authenticity. You chose a shallow affair over our marriage. Now you've lost it all, and you're not even sure who you really are without those things. Her eyes held his one last time. That, Fletcher, is the true tragedy here. Not what you did to me, but what you've done to yourself. As Abigail walked away, back straight and head high to face the crowd alone, Fletcher Davenport, heir to a real estate empire, son of a legendary businessman, husband to an extraordinary woman, felt himself dissolving into nothing. The foundation of identity he'd built his life upon had been revealed as illusion, leaving him alone with the one thing he'd spent a lifetime avoiding, the truth of his own hollow core. 3 years passed, like a slow healing wound. Boston winters gave way to reluctant springs, brilliant summers and melancholy autumns, each season marking the passage of time since the day Fletcher Davenport's carefully constructed life had shattered at the New Dawn Children's Home. The scandal had blazed through Boston society with predictable ferocity. The Globe's headline, "Davenport Dynasty Disgrace, Real Estate Heirs Double Life, Exposed at Orphanage Opening," was only the beginning. For weeks, Fletcher's name dominated local media, his family legacy dissected and displayed like a specimen under glass. The aftermath unfolded with ruthless efficiency. Willow Sinclair disappeared from Boston within days, her deception exposed when Robert Erickson's wife demanded a paternity test that confirmed what Judge Montgomery had suspected. The child wasn't Fletcher's. It wasn't Erickson's either. The final twist in Willow's elaborate scheme was that the father was Thomas Caldwell, her former employer, with whom she'd maintained contact despite their previous settlement. Fletcher had watched his world contract with brutal swiftness. Abigail filed for divorce the week after the inauguration. The Board of Davenport Developments, led by Judge Montgomery, requested his resignation for personal reasons. His social circle evaporated overnight, loyalty to Abigail far outweighing any ties to him. Now, on a crisp November morning, Fletcher stood at the window of his modest apartment in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood, watching fishing boats return to the marina. At 45, he looked older, gray dominating his temples, lines etched more deeply around his eyes. The designer suits were gone, replaced by practical clothes suited to his new life. His phone chimed with a text from his brother. Flight landed. Heading to hotel. Dinner tonight? Fletcher smiled faintly. Michael's quarterly visits had become an anchor in his reconstructed existence. His younger brother had been the only family member who hadn't completely severed ties after the scandal. The move to Seattle had been strategic, far from Boston's social ecosystem, but close enough to the Davenport family's secondary holdings to allow Fletcher to rebuild some semblance of professional life. He'd started small, consulting on affordable housing projects, leveraging his expertise without the burden of his tarnished name. Gradually, almost accidentally, he'd found purpose in work he would have dismissed as beneath him in his previous life. Helping transform abandoned buildings into viable housing for working families satisfied something in Fletcher that the glossy luxury developments never had. For the first time, he created spaces that served needs beyond status and appearance. His phone rang, his attorney in Boston. Fletcher, the paperwork came through. Abigail's acquiring the remaining shares. The news wasn't unexpected. As part of their divorce settlement, Fletcher had transferred controlling interest in Davenport Developments to Abigail. The company had thrived under her leadership, her vision transforming it from a traditional real estate firm to one that balanced profitable ventures with community-focused developments. "That's fine," Fletcher replied. "Has she seen the letter?" "Delivered this morning. No response yet." Fletcher had written to Abigail only twice since leaving Boston. The first letter, a desperate, rambling apology, had gone unanswered. This second communication, sent 3 years later, was different. A formal relinquishment of all claims to the Davenport name and legacy, legally transferring the last of his inherited shares to her with no conditions. "Thanks, Peter. Keep me posted." After hanging up, Fletcher gathered his coat and keys. His brother wouldn't arrive for hours, and he needed movement to process the finality of severing his last connection to the Davenport empire. Across the country, Abigail Davenport reviewed the document in her office overlooking Boston Harbor. At 41, she carried herself with the quiet authority of a woman who had faced devastation and emerged stronger. Her dark hair was shorter now, silver threads at the temples adding distinction rather than age. "You don't have to accept this," her attorney advised. "The shares are worth millions." "I'm aware." Abigail set the document aside. "Schedule the transfer." The intercom on her desk buzzed. "Ms. Davenport, your 3 o'clock is here. Send them in." The door opened to reveal a young woman with copper-colored hair, accompanied by a social worker Abigail recognized from New Dawn. "Ms. Collins, thank you for coming." Abigail rose, extending her hand. "I understand you're interested in our apprenticeship program." The young woman, barely 20, with determination etched into her posture, stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am. I aged out of New Dawn last year. I want to learn property management so I can help others like me find stable housing." Abigail gestured toward the chairs. "Tell me your story, Ms. Collins." As the young woman spoke of foster homes, finding stability at New Dawn and her ambitions, Abigail felt the familiar sense of purpose that had sustained her through the darkest days after Fletcher's betrayal. New Dawn Children's Home had not only survived the scandal of its opening day, but had thrived, becoming a model for innovative childcare facilities across New England. Abigail had channeled her pain into expansion, opening 2 additional homes and creating transition programs for those aging out of the system. The scandal that might have destroyed her had instead crystallized her purpose. After Fletcher left, Abigail had done something that surprised even herself. She had adopted 7-year-old Sophia, a girl from New Dawn whose traumatic background had made her placement difficult. The decision, made from a place of authentic connection rather than as replacement for biological children, had transformed both their lives. When Ms. Collins finished her story, Abigail nodded. "Our program requires commitment, but we'll provide mentorship and practical experience. Are you ready for that responsibility?" "More than ready, Ms. Davenport." After they departed, Abigail returned to the window, Fletcher's letter still on her desk. 3 years of rebuilding, of redefining herself beyond betrayed wife. 3 years of converting private pain into public purpose, much as she had done after losing her ability to bear children. Her assistant appeared at the door. "Judge Montgomery's family sent this for you." Abigail accepted the envelope, recognizing the judge's distinctive handwriting. Thaddeus Montgomery had passed away 2 months earlier, leaving a void in Boston's legal community and in Abigail's personal life. The judge had become her mentor and confidant after Fletcher's departure, his guidance invaluable as she navigated taking control of the company. Inside the envelope was a letter with her name on it, and another sealed envelope marked, "For Fletcher Davenport, to be delivered when Abigail deems appropriate." She opened her letter first. "Abigail, if you're reading this, I've finally lost an argument with time. I've waited to share something with you until I was certain both you and Fletcher had found your separate paths forward. Enclosed is a letter for Fletcher. You'll know when or if he should receive it. I trust your judgment, as I've trusted your strength these past years. Fletcher made unforgivable choices, but he was also, in many ways, a creation of his father's impossible expectations. Richard Davenport cast a shadow too large for any son to escape. I watched Fletcher struggle under that weight his entire life, forever seeking approval from a man who found fault in perfection itself. This doesn't excuse his betrayal, but perhaps it helps explain the broken man behind the polished facade. You have rebuilt something remarkable from the ashes he left. For that alone you have my eternal admiration." With deepest respect, Thaddeus Montgomery Abigail sat quietly, absorbing the judge's final wisdom. After a moment, she picked up her phone. "Samantha, book me on tomorrow's early flight to Seattle." Fletcher walked along Puget Sound, the November air sharp in his lungs. 3 years of therapy had helped him understand patterns that had shaped his choices. His desperate need for his father's approval, the hollow pursuit of appearances over substance, his inability to process grief after Abigail's miscarriages. Understanding didn't erase the damage, but it allowed him to build something different. His work with affordable housing developers had grown into a consultancy focused on community-based projects. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd found genuine purpose only after losing the empire he'd been groomed to inherit. His phone vibrated with a text from Michael. "Flight delayed. Tomorrow morning now, sorry." Fletcher texted back acknowledgement, then continued walking. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of salt and impending rain. He turned back toward his apartment, thoughts drifting to Abigail as they often did in quiet moments. He had seen her once accidentally during a necessary trip to Boston 18 months earlier. She'd been leaving a restaurant with Sophia, a child Fletcher recognized from New Dawn's opening day. The sight of Abigail as a mother had pierced him with an ache so profound he'd almost called out to her. Instead, he'd watched from across the street as they disappeared into a waiting car, Abigail's laughter floating back to him like a ghost of possibilities lost. Back at his apartment, Fletcher made tea and settled at his desk to review plans for a new project, converting an abandoned school into mixed-income housing. The work engaged him, offering purpose without the pressure of family legacy. A knock at the door interrupted his concentration. Expecting the delivery he'd ordered, he opened it without checking the peephole. Abigail stood in the hallway, elegant in a simple grey coat, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Fletcher." Time seemed to suspend between them. He registered details with hyperclarity, the new silver in her hair, slight lines around her eyes, the absence of her wedding ring. Abby. Her nickname escaped before he could stop it. "How did you—" "Your brother gave me your address. May I come in?" He stepped aside wordlessly, acutely aware of his modest apartment through her eyes, the IKEA furniture, architectural drawings covering the dining table, bookshelves filled with volumes on urban planning and community development. "It's not what you're used to," he said unnecessarily. "Neither are you." She studied him with clinical detachment. "You look different." 3 years will do that," Fletcher replied. "Can I make you tea?" She nodded, removing her coat to reveal a simple black dress that reminded him of countless dinner conversations in their former life. While he prepared tea, she examined his workspace, fingers trailing over blueprints. "Affordable housing," she noted. "Quite a departure." "It matters," he said simply. "It helps." They sat at his small kitchen table, steam rising between them like the ghosts of their shared past. "I received your letter," Abigail began. "Transferring your remaining shares." It seemed right. "Why now after 3 years?" Fletcher considered his answer carefully. "Because I finally understand that I never deserved them in the first place. My father built that company. You transformed it. I was just the caretaker who failed at his one job." Something shifted in Abigail's expression. Not softening exactly, but recognition. "I have something for you." She removed an envelope from her purse. "From Judge Montgomery. He left it with instructions to deliver it when I thought appropriate." Fletcher accepted the envelope with trepidation. "He never contacted me after. He was protecting the company. And me." Abigail watched as he opened the letter. "He died 2 months ago." The news struck Fletcher harder than expected. Judge Montgomery had been a second father in many ways, sometimes warmer than Richard Davenport, always more understanding. He unfolded the letter, recognizing the judge's distinctive handwriting. "Fletcher, if you're reading this, 2 things have happened. I've departed this world, and Abigail has decided you're ready for these words. I was hard on you after your betrayal, perhaps harder than anyone. I did this not from hatred, but from disappointment. I saw in you potential your father never acknowledged, which made your self-destruction all the more painful to witness. Your father cast a long shadow. I watched him crush your spirit with impossible standards, teaching you to value appearance over substance, until you became precisely what he created, a man so concerned with the facade that he lost sight of what stood behind it. This doesn't excuse your choices, but perhaps explains them. We become what we're shaped to be unless we find the courage to reshape ourselves. I hope you've found that courage in the years since Boston. I hope you've discovered who Fletcher Davenport might have been without the burden of being Richard Davenport's son. You lost much, but perhaps you found something more valuable. Yourself. Thaddeus Montgomery." Fletcher lowered the letter, eyes burning. "He understood," he said quietly. "Yes." Abigail's voice was gentle but firm. "Understanding isn't forgiveness, Fletcher, but it's something." They sat in silence, the years between them both unbridgeable and somehow diminished by the simple act of sharing space again. "Sophia is beautiful," Fletcher said finally. "I saw you once in Boston." Surprise flickered across Abigail's face. "You never said anything. What right did I have?" He smiled sadly. "You seemed happy." "I am." The simple assertion held no malice, just truth. "It's a different life than I planned, but it's authentic. It's mine." The word authentic resonated between them. In their 12 years together, Authenticity had been sacrificed repeatedly at the altar of appearance, by both of them in different ways. "I should go," Abigail said, rising. "My flight back is early tomorrow." Fletcher stood, the distance between them measured in more than physical space. "Thank you for bringing the letter, and for seeing me." At the door, Abigail turned back, her expression softening slightly. The man who built affordable housing instead of luxury condos, who gave away his inheritance, he might have been worth knowing. The simple acknowledgement of his changed self felt like both benediction and final goodbye. As the door closed behind her, Fletcher understood that some victories come only through devastating loss, that finding his authentic self had required the destruction of everything he once believed defined him. He returned to the window overlooking Puget Sound, Judge Montgomery's letter still in his hand. The rain had started, drops tracing paths down the glass like tears. In their distorted reflection, Fletcher Davenport, no longer heir, husband, or prodigal son, saw clearly for perhaps the first time a man stripped of pretense, standing alone but finally, authentically himself. If this story touched your heart and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.